Hey everybody, welcome to Film Flashback. In honor of the new Predator movie with written and directed by Shane Black, we decided to go back and watch 1987's Monster Squad, also written by Shane Black. You know, interestingly, Nick, it's actually the director of Monster Squad, Decker. He wrote the new Predator along with Shane Black. He wrote for like Creepshow and Tales from the Crypt and other things like that. Didn't do a ton of directing, it looks like.
I think probably what happened is he didn't think he could ever do any better than Monster Squad and decided to call it, because that's what I would do. So let's talk a little bit about Monster Squad. This is a classic to me, cult classic. It's one of those movies I remember as a kid just being in love with. It's an adventure movie. It's great, and I think it does hold up. It's a lot of fun. To me, it's not the Goonies, but there's some clear parallels there where it was trying to be the Goonies.
When the monsters show up, it's almost like having a cameo from a really famous actor or something like that. It doesn't matter who's playing Dracula, it's Dracula.
You don't really have to explain, so the plot for this movie is pretty basic. It's essentially a 100-year anniversary of Van Helsing banishing the monsters into the abyss or whatever it is. I had this thought after I watched the movie, which is, Monster Squad's great, I loved it, but if they would have made a prequel to that to actually see all the Van Helsing stuff, I'd have been in. It looked awesome, because on the special effects standpoint, Stan Winston did this movie, who's, Predator, Alien, you name any good practical special effects, Jurassic Park, he's the king.
It's clearly made by people who just love monsters. And there's so many little tidbits, like the armadillos.
Yeah, the armadillos.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh my god, armadillo.
Armadillos in the crypt? You have to look up trivia to find out that it was a throwback to the old
the 1931 Dracula movie that had armadillos in it, which are not indigenous to Transylvania.
Turns out. And then it's flash forward to the 80s, and you get introduced to these characters who are very archetypal, to the point where one of the characters, you don't barely hear his name. I mean, you get
Horace.
His name eventually. Most people don't call Horace. They call him Fat Kid, like his friends call him Fat Kid to his face.
You know what, speaking of the kids are great in it, but what I really like, it's a Shane Black movie. He's one of my favorite writers, directors. I just think his style, I love it. But one of the things he does with these kids, which I think are reasons we like movies like The Goonies and Stand By Me, the kids talk like adults.
Do it on welfare. Maybe he's the German spy. Oh, good one. We're not at war with Germany anymore. We're at war with Vietnam.
The monsters are not super scary. When we talk about, let's put ourselves in a real situation where this is happening. Who really strikes fear? Mummy, not that scary. The coolest looking special effects monster was a creature from the Black Lagoon. Looked awesome.
Yeah.
A fully functional mask, but he didn't really,
yeah.
What's he gonna do, scratch you?
There's one moment where you think he's gonna get his shining moment, where he appears and one of the little kids sees him coming out of the water, and he grabs a snack that the kid dropped in the water, and I'm like, here he is. And spoiler, nothing
happens
in that moment. He comes back later, but I'm like, okay, that there was a scene somewhere that got cut.
We have a little bit of an idea what Dracula can do. We see a little bit of his power, a little bit of Wolfman, but the other guys have been helpful to see something to give us an idea of why we should be scared of them outside of their just, hey, I'm the creature from the Black Lagoon. Oh,
and there might be
were they going to give you a heart attack?
There might be a couple reasons for that.
Monsters. Us. Midnight in the world.
We meet the main character's parents, and they're feuding, and it looks like they might be getting divorced, but there's not a lot of heart in it, I don't think. It's kind of just kids with a club, and this bad thing happens, but there is a nice sentimental moment you get between the little girl Phoebe, who's being picked on and not really quite a part of the group, and then Frankenstein's monster. That relationship just works for some reason, and she's not scared of him.
The people who made the movie are big old school monster movie fans, which means they know the original Frankenstein movie, and probably the most iconic scene in that movie is Frankenstein and a little girl.
Yeah.
And it ends differently in that movie.
Right.
But when she gets a great scene when she shows off Frank to everybody else afterwards.
Yeah.
It's very lighthearted.
And then the idea of him seeing the Halloween Frankenstein mask It's just great. It's just really well done, and you know the kids feel bad about it. They're going like, "Oh right, yeah."
He goes
this
scary.
Scary. All right, guys. So if you've listened to this point and you have not yet seen Monster Squad, but you want to, now would be a good time to hit pause because we're going to talk about some spoilers.
There's a moment where Dracula blows up the clubhouse when he knows for a fact that the kids aren't in there, and it's almost like, is this just like a pyro moment for Dracula?
It didn't. Yeah, you're right. It didn't track story-wise why he would do that if he knowingly knew. Unless he's just a dick.
Yeah.
You know, he's gonna blow up their fort because they're not in it. Like maybe he's just an ass. Like
yeah, he like kind of smiles like he's getting some excitement out of it, and that made him sort of petty. It made him kind of like a teenager where he's just like, "F you, man."
Take that.
He actually looks more like Pat Riley. Like young Pat Riley.
He looks a lot like that, right?
Run the triangle offense until you get it.
We do know clearly early on how to kill some of these guys. They do. There's a scene in the treehouse where they talk about how to kill the Wolfman. This motherfucker gets a stick of dynamite shoved in his belt and completely blown up. This is one of the coolest
Blown to
parts of the
pieces.
movie.
But it
Blown
is,
to
you're right.
shreds.
It's really well set up.
And really, also, what should be included in any Monster Squad is that if you need to stun Wolfman, you kick him in the nards. We know that works. Great move. It's one of the classic lines to me in any 80s movie, really. Kick him in the nards. Wolfman's got nards.
Wolfman's gone mad.
It's at like the top of the IMDb quotes.
Oh, yeah. I remember as a kid.
Should have put it on the
saying
poster.
that. Yeah, should have tried to kick Dracula in the nards. But
They turned Dracula into like the Superman of supervillains in this movie. He's like super strong. He morphs all the time. He's got this badass car with like the big skull
that
on
thing
the front.
is sweet. Yeah.
And at one point, the main character's cop father is with his partner, and they go like car to car chicken style, and those guys scream and they just pass right through. So he's like a ghost too.
Yeah, you know, and what's funny about it, like you buy it, like they didn't really take a lot of time to set up the rules for the most part, but when he turns into a bat and gets shot, really hurt him more so. And then they show this nasty ass half Dracula, half bat thing that's clearly wounded. That was really cool. Another thing I really liked about Dracula is when Horace, aka Fat Kid, takes a piece of pizza and sticks it on his face. It's got garlic in it, so it burns his face. But like, not only that it just quivered, but the amount of damage that slice of pizza did to his face was awesome.
They do make him intense, which is good, because if you were talking about the scary factor, and it's not scary enough, but he's coming in and choking people out.
And as far as the villain goes, you have Dracula and you have this thing, but another cool element of what they're up against is time. You have this element of time where they have to read this German book, which no one can speak. Has to be a virgin reading it and speaking German that can speak German, and no one can. Well,
it's a nice good problem because it's solvable, but it's not. But it's not immediately apparent how you're gonna do it. They get a girl who says she's a virgin, and then she reads it through, and it doesn't work. It's one of the best jokes. Or what does she say? She goes like, well, there was Brad, but he doesn't count.
Yeah. In typical teenager fashion. Like, no, it does count.
This is still a kid's movie. Mm-hmm. It definitely holds up. It doesn't feel too old. Most of what feels old is there's a lot of really 80s like slang and movie insults, the kind of thing that even in the 80s you were thinking, nobody ever insults anybody that way.
See you later, Band-Aid breath.
It is okay. I think that the movie looks like it is for kids. Every time you can tell they're on a set every time, because that is not real sunlight.
That sunlight was blasting.
Every time the sun's coming through the windows, it looks like a nuclear bomb just went off outside.
Getting to the very end, we're talking about earlier about the heart of the movie is really Frankenstein, his relationship with Phoebe, the little girl. And at the very end, when all is lost, Dracula's got her by the neck, he lifts her up, she's screaming. Frankenstein comes in and completely pays off that relationship that we saw. He grabs Dracula, throws him in to the vortex. It's just an awesome callback, and that's I can't think of a better way for that movie to end. A very satisfying ending to me with Frankenstein coming in, the monster saving the Monster Squad is very cool.
Van Helsing shows up at the very end. He comes out of the vortex and sucks Dracula and the rest
and
back
throws
in.
a thumbs up.
Everybody gets a big 80s thumbs up. I was hoping for a freeze frame.
Yeah.
And then it just
we did get a montage as well.
Oh, you gotta have a montage.
Classic 80s montage.
Gotta have a montage. And then it just made me go, all right, so where's the Van Helsing movie?
Yeah, I'm in. Let's make that one Shane Black. Looking at you, buddy.
Yeah, so I think we can both recommend The Monster Squad.
Yeah.
1987, sponsored by Pepsi.
And Burger King. Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. If you remember it as a kid and you saw it, you enjoyed it.
Yes, definitely check it out. All right, I'm Matthew, this is Nick, and we'll see you next time.
Hey!
Handlebar.